Hello and welcome back to the Crafty Corner. I'm Jana and I'm here to tell you about our new challenge over at the Funky Junkie Challenge blog. Today we're going to be working to the theme of moving parts. Now, this challenge is open from July 13th through July 26th. If you'd like to play along in the crafty fun, links are down in the description box. So, moving parts. This can refer to a card that actually does move. This might be a wobbler, a slider, maybe a pop-up card. In my case, I decided that I wanted to try something new. Today, I'm going to be trying to make an Infiniti card. This is my first time making one, so it should be pretty interesting. If you'd like to see which supplies I'm going to be using, go ahead and pause here. All right, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today, we are making an Infiniti card. Since our theme is moving parts, what better way than to create a card with multiple sides and movement? Okay, to make an Infiniti card, the first thing that we need to do is get 4 pieces of cardstock, and we want this to be a good solid base color. For our cardstock, I have 4 pieces cut to 6 inches by 3 inches. And we need 4 of them. Next, we're going to be scoring these pieces. And to do that, I'm bringing in a scoreboard. So to score these, we want to be scoring at 1.5 and at 4.5. And we're going to do this for all of the pieces. So just like that, we're going to quickly score it out. And again, the measurements are 1.5 and 4.5. And after, we're going to be folding on these lines. All right, let's go ahead and set the scoreboard aside. So with these pieces, we're going to fold them back and forth a couple of times. We want to make sure that our cardstock can move very easily. This is going to be key when making our Infiniti card. And I'm going to be doing this to all 4 pieces of cardstock. Now, this cardstock is about 90 pounds. You could definitely use heavier cardstock, but I found this was stiff enough to give our card good form and shape. Any thinner and the card might not have as much stability as we would like. But since we're going to be building up several layers on here, this should work just fine. Okay, now that these are all folded, I'm going to set 2 of them aside, and I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to measure 1.5 inches in the middle. I want to create a little line here as a marker so that I can keep my tape on 1/2 of the card. This is going to be important for when we're putting the pieces together. So these marks are going to help me out as I do the assembly. Next, we're going to take some double-sided sticky adhesive tape and add them to the sides. I'm going to put one piece here above the mark that we made and another part over here. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. One here and one here. Then down here on our second piece, we're going to put them on the bottom. One here, one over here, another there, and the last one goes here. Okay, now we're going to peel off the tape. Now, if you don't have fingernails, you could definitely use the Tim Holtz die pick to lift up the tape backing and peel it off. And we're just going to quickly go through and take all of the pieces of tape off. And then we will start attaching and building the foundation of our Infiniti card. Good. Now I'm going to put these face down, just like this. And we're going to back this up just a little bit so that we can see what we're doing. Okay. And I want to make sure everything is neatly lined up. We're going to take this, line it up, and carefully stick it down. Making sure that all of my lines are neatly lined up. Good. All right, that's the first side. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to take this, line it up at the corners, and carefully place it. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to check underneath to make sure everything is still lined up. There we go. Okay. Now, let's see how it works. So here we have the front. We open, lift up, turn, and flip. Perfect. This works. I don't understand how it works. All I know is that it does work, and that is absolutely amazing. Side 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different sides to play with and create on. Okay, now the next part is a little bit tricky and it's going to take a while. So let's set our base aside for the moment and let's go ahead and make a list of which pieces we're going to be needing next. So for the rest of the card, we are going to need to cut a few pieces. We are going to need 8 squares at 2 inches and a half. Then we're going to need 8 rectangles at 1 inch and a quarter by 2 inches and 3/4. After, we will need 8 mini squares measuring at 1 1/4 by 1 1/4. So let's go ahead and start cutting our pieces. For this part, I've decided to go with some of the Tim Holtz Ideology craft stock paper. This is an old SKU, so this is a great time to use some of this up. If you have some of the modern craft stock SKU in cool colors, that will work just as well. All right, let's go ahead and put this part on fast forward while I start cutting up all of our pieces. Now let's take a quick look at our pieces. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of our large squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of our rectangles, and 4 and 4 to make 8 of our mini squares. Now comes the fun part. We're going to be creating some distressed papers to go on top of the matching matted backs. Okay, let's go ahead and clear this off and start creating with some distress magic. To make our backgrounds, we're going to be playing with some distress spray stains and distress spray oxides. And to control the mess, I'm going to be bringing in the splat box. We're going to lay down a piece of paper towel, and then we're going to bring in some watercolor cardstock. And this is the watercolor cardstock by Tim Holtz and Ranger. To start with, I'm going to be spritzing the paper, some water with the distress sprayer, and then we're going to be adding our colors. For the first color combo, I am going to be using Uncharted Mariner Oxide, some Crackling Campfire, and a touch of Mermaid Lagoon. I also have off to the side a die pick that will help me keep the surface flat as I work. All right, let's just center this. Okay, so I'm going to start with a touch of crackling campfire. I'm just going to add a couple of spritz like this, and then I'm going to go in with some Mermaid Lagoon just along the edges. That's looking good. And then we'll shake up the oxide and add that along the sides. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put the rest of this on fast forward as I drizzle in water and dry this off. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at those background pieces we just completed. So all of these have splashes of Uncharted Mariner in them, since that is our new fantastic distress ink. And I've paired that with some other shades of blue and some neutrals like Old Paper and Brushed Corduroy. So now we can go ahead and start chopping these up into their smaller components. Now, each one of these is going to be cut up and matched with a different set of matte backgrounds. So, for instance, we're going to take this set, I'm going to put that one here, and this one's going to go with that, this one with that one, and so forth. So, I'm going to stack these up and we're going to start cutting these down. Now, to cut these down, I'm going to be cutting all of the pieces 1/4 of an inch less than what the width and height were on these pieces. So for example, this little square is 1 1/4 inches. I'm now going to cut 4 1-inch squares out of this background. Now for these larger squares, these were measuring at 2 3/4 inches. So I'm now going to be cutting squares out of this at 2.5 inches instead. Here is a chart showing the measurements for the squares and rectangles that I'm going to be cutting. So to do that, we're going to be bringing in the mini tonic trimmer. I'm going to go through the first set in real time and then we'll put the rest on fast forward. I'm going to cut the larger squares first, and then we'll do the small squares. So the large squares are going to need to be cut at 2.5 inches. So we'll just slide that under here and make the cut. So this part here, we'll need that for the little squares. And now we'll cut this one 2.5. And one more at 2.5. Good. So this is going to go on here like that. That's going to look great, and this is going to become part of the card panel. All right, we'll set those pieces aside. Now let's go ahead and do our little 1-inch squares. We're going to take this and chop that down to 1 inch. And now I need 4 little squares. Okay. Now let's see, this is originally measuring at 5.5, so that is pretty easy to cut down. I am going to just take the extra 1/2 inch off the bottom and then we can just chop this up by inches. All right, that should be pretty easy. Okay, and one more. And there we go. We have our squares. So let's go ahead and put the rest of this on fast forward. Now that all of our pieces are cut, it's time to start adding some detail to our panels. This is going to be for the front panel of our card, and we're going to be adding details with stamp set Botanical Collage CMS 447. To add the stamps, we're going to be using some of the Distress Archival Black Soot ink, and I'm going to be using a grid block for stamping. To start with, I really like this butterfly, and this is going to become one of the main details on the front panel. So let's start there. So we're just going to take our stamp, put it down onto the grid block, move our extra pieces aside, and we're going to stamp our first image. So taking our ink, we're just going to tap, 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 and make sure that we have good coverage. Okay, that looks good. So I'm just going to line this up, and I want to make sure that the butterfly is going to be the main focal point of this panel. Right there. Apply good firm pressure. And lift. Perfect. That looks really good. The detail on this is fantastic, and the butterfly looks really nice. All right, let's set that panel aside. For the second panel on the front of the card, I'm going to be using one of the flower pieces. We're going to be using this one. So we'll stick that to the stamping block, and again, we will ink up the stamp. Okay, and we'll stamp it down. Good firm pressure and lift. All right, those will be the two pieces for our front panel. Now for these other little pieces, I want to grab some of the text off the edge of the stamp. So we're going to ink this up again, and I'm going to be stamping both of these at the same time to pick up some of the interesting details. I think I might end up stamping them separately. Or maybe I can do something like that. Let's see. Ooh, that should look good. Okay. All right. We've got those two little side pieces done. Now, let's take care of these two. And for that, I'm going to be switching back to the butterfly stamp. All right, we'll add our ink. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and add details to the rest of our pre-cut pieces. For this, we're going to put that on fast forward. Now that we have all of our pieces embellished, it is time to start assembling the card. So this is the front panel. I'm going to walk you through the first section where I put together all the pieces, and then we'll put the rest of it on fast forward. Okay, so we have all of our panels, we have all of our matting backdrops. So we're going to go ahead and take an ATG gun. You could use other applications of double-sided tape or collage medium to apply these. So we're just going to grab a piece, add some adhesive, and stick it down. Once I have all of these assembled, then I will start placing them onto the card front. I like the ATG gun because it is very quick and I don't have to mess around with peeling off backing tapes. So I find this to be a quick and easy method for assembling multiple pieces. Okay, now we have the squares and then we can start placing the pieces. This is definitely exciting. This is the first Infiniti card that I've ever made, so this is pretty neat. I still can't get over the mechanics and how simple it is to actually make. Each time I've seen Infiniti cards, they just look so complex and incredibly time consuming, but I've been very surprised, and this hasn't taken as much time or given me as much difficulty as I had originally suspected. Okay, last piece. Now we can start placing these onto the card front. Oops, that's just a little crooked. We'll just move that around and make sure everything's lined up. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to start with the squares first, and we're going to be placing them like this. So more double-sided tape on the back of the square panel. And we'll just stick that right here. Okay, one more square. And then we can move on to the rectangles. I am loving the new botanical collage stamps. Those have so much detail, and that was going to be the perfect theme for this card. So much fun. Okay, and now I will start placing these. Okay, 3 more to go, and then we can start the next side of the card. Okay, let's place this down. There. All right, last one for this card front. Okay, and this is our first side of the card. Let's go ahead and put this next part and fast forward as we take care of the other 3 sides. here is the completed card with all of the panels in place. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is add a couple of finishing touches on the front of the card. I decided to pull out some of the Tim Holtz stickers from Ideology, and we're going to add a couple to the two front panels. We're going to do Hello Friend, Beautiful Day. Just need to line that up. And we are going to do One of a Kind and Brilliant. All right, let's go ahead and do a flip through of this Infiniti card. So this would be side 1. We open. There we have side 2, and we have a couple more sentiments full of wonder and collect beautiful moments. Then we flip again, and we have a spot where you could write to the recipient of this card and a spot to leave a little message. Side 4. I love this side, it's so shiny. And back to the beginning. Thank you so much for joining me here today for the latest Funky Junky Challenge, Moving Parts. Here we've created a card that moves. As always, we greatly look forward to seeing all of your fantastic creative makes over at the Funky Junky Challenge blog. And don't forget, you can also enter through Instagram. All links will be down in the description box. So, until next time, happy crafting.